In a city where shadows move on their own, and neon lights hide secrets, one man clutches a glowing envelope that could change everything. Every choice he makes, every step he takes, is a test. The streets twist, the night whispers, and the game has only just begun. Dare to follow him, or be left behind in darkness. The city was asleep, or at least, it wanted to be. Streetlights flickered in the cold, restless wind, casting long, trembling shadows across empty streets. The hum of electricity ran through the underground cables like a heartbeat, slow and steady, unnoticed by anyone who thought their world was ordinary. But not all were asleep. High above the city, on the edge of the tallest skyscraper, a lone figure stood, motionless. His coat fluttered faintly in the wind, but his gaze never wavered from the streets below. He had been watching for a very long time. Centuries, even that he was called the Watcher, not a name, exactly, but the closest humans could come to describing him. And watching was all he had ever done. Tonight, however, something felt different. A ripple in the air. Almost imperceptible. Like the moment right before lightning strikes. He felt it through his skin, through his bones, even through the cold metal under his feet. Then, across the narrow street below, a shadow stirred. Not a shadow cast by light. Not the kind that stretches and bends with the sun. This one moved independently. Fluidly. With intent. The Watcher's eyes narrowed. And from that shadow, a man emerged. He looked human, tall, dark-haired, dressed in a black coat that seemed to swallow the faint glow of the streetlights. But there was something in the way he moved, something almost impossible, that made the Watcher's pulse quicken. He smiled. Not kindly. Not cruelly. But with a confidence that made the night itself seem uneasy. "You're late," the Watcher said, his voice barely above the wind. "Time is a human concept," the man replied softly, tilting his head. His voice slid through the streets like smoke, curling into the Watcher's ears with a hint of amusement. "But I suppose you were expecting me sooner." "I wasn't expecting you at all," the Watcher replied, calm, controlled. But inside, a tension coiled around his chest. The man laughed lightly, stepping closer. Each step seemed to pull the darkness with him, stretching shadows unnaturally across the pavement. "Rules, rules, rules," he murmured. "You're always talking about rules. Boundaries. Lines you cannot cross. But tell me, do they ever bother you?" The Watcher did not answer. He had seen what this man could do. He had felt it. Whisperers like him did not break rules, they bent them. They existed to tempt, to manipulate, to create chaos with the smallest gesture. And now he was here. Far below, in a quiet apartment building across the city, a young man stirred awake. Daniel. 26, exhausted, drowning in bills, and convinced that life had stopped listening to him long ago. He rubbed his eyes and glanced at his phone. A new message blinked on the screen, 50,000, one small favor. He frowned. Mistake. Spam. Maybe. But the handwriting on the attached digital card, unnaturally neat. Too neat. Almost as if it had been crafted for him alone. He laughed nervously. "Yeah, right. Just what I need, another scam." But even as he tried to dismiss it, the words lingered. One small favor. The apartment door was locked. No one had entered. No one could have left an envelope. Yet it sat there on the table, black, mysterious, impossible. Daniel's fingers hovered over it, a sense of unease crawling up his spine. Meanwhile, the stranger, the whisperer, stood on another rooftop, unseen, studying Daniel through the window. He tilted his head, amused, like a cat watching a mouse hesitate on the edge of a trap. Humans. So fragile. So predictable. All of them could be influenced with a single suggestion, a carefully placed temptation. And this one, Daniel, had desperation written all over him. The whisperer's lips curved into a faint smile. $50,000, he whispered, so low it could have been part of the wind. And all I ask is one small favor. The watcher observed silently, from his distant perch. His gaze locked on the young man's apartment window. He knew what had been set in motion. This was no longer a test. The first move had been made. And Daniel, he didn't even know he was a player yet. Daniel picked up the black card again, reading the words over and over. His heart beat faster. This could change everything. Pay off debts. Fix his life. Maybe even, escape. The whisper of opportunity was intoxicating. Dangerous. Impossible to ignore. A soft wind blew through his apartment, rattling the windows. Daniel shivered, feeling, rather than hearing, a faint presence behind him. He turned, but the room was empty. And yet, in the shadows between reality and imagination, he could feel it. Watching. Waiting. Patient. Outside, the streets were waking up, indifferent to the invisible game being played above and below. The watcher exhaled quietly, tension coiling in his chest. He knew the whisperer would not push Daniel. Humans always made their own choices, but the temptation was enough. The black envelope sat ominously on the table. The words on the card glinted in the dim morning light, one small favor. Daniel picked it up again, his fingers trembling. And somewhere far above, high above the city, the whisperer disappeared into the shadows. But his laugh lingered in the air, twisting around the buildings, echoing softly into Daniel's mind. Let's see how far you'll go. Daniel sets the envelope down, and hears a faint tap at the window. Heart racing, he approaches, and freezes. A shadowy figure stands there. No face. Just darkness. And for the first time, he realizes, the game has begun. The morning sun spilled lazily over the city, painting the glass towers gold. Streetlights flickered one last time before giving way to daylight, and the hum of traffic filled the streets like a rising tide. To the ordinary eye, it was just another day. But for Daniel, the day was already unusual. He sat at his small kitchen table, staring at the black envelope. The words, "one small favor," glimmered faintly on the card as if daring him to act. His fingers trembled slightly. Could it really be real? $50,000. Enough to clear his debts. Enough to make everything right, if he dared. His phone buzzed again, this time with a new message from an unknown number. It simply read. Tonight. 10 p.m. 23rd Street. Come alone. Daniel's heart hammered. He laughed nervously. Come on, it's probably a prank. He set the envelope down and tried to focus on his morning coffee. But his mind wouldn't let go. The thought of the money, the possibility, it consumed him. He didn't notice the soft ripple in the air, the faint chill that brushed past him, or the almost imperceptible shadow that seemed to slither along the walls of his apartment. High above, on a rooftop far across the city, the watcher watched Daniel. Every movement, every hesitation, every thought was visible to him. The whisperer, unseen, lingered just outside the city's edge. He watched Daniel as a predator watches prey, silent, patient, and calculating. Humans are so easily tempted, the whisperer murmured, a grin playing across his lips. Give them just a hint, and they step into your hand themselves. The watcher's eyes narrowed. He had been observing the whisperer for centuries. Subtle. Calculated. Dangerous. And Daniel. Daniel was now the first pawn in the game. The day dragged slowly, each hour stretching longer than the last. Daniel tried to ignore the envelope, tried to focus on work, on the coffee in his cup, on the mundane sounds of life outside his window, but he couldn't. At 9:45 p.m., he found himself walking toward the address in the message. Each step felt heavier than the last, and the city seemed to watch him as he walked through empty streets and narrow alleys. The wind whispered past him, carrying a faint laugh that made him shiver. Finally, he arrived. A narrow building, almost invisible in the dim streetlights. The door creaked as he pushed it open. The air inside smelled faintly of dust and old paper. "Hello," he called softly. No response. He stepped inside, the floorboards creaking beneath his weight. The shadows seemed to move just out of sight, stretching unnaturally along the walls. Then he heard it, a soft, deliberate clapping. Daniel froze. From the corner of the room, a figure emerged. Tall. Dark coat. Calm smile. The Whisperer. "I was wondering when you'd arrive," he said, his voice smooth, melodic, almost hypnotic. Daniel's mouth went dry. Who are you?" "Oh, I don't need a name," the Whisperer replied. "Not yet. But you have something I want." Daniel's eyes darted to the envelope in his pocket. He felt a cold twinge of fear. You mean this?" The Whisperer shook his head. "No. I mean your choice. Your willingness. Your curiosity. That's what makes life interesting." Daniel swallowed. I don't understand." The Whisperer stepped closer. Each movement seemed to bend the light, stretching the shadows in strange, impossible angles. "Do you think this is about money?" "Oh, Daniel, it's never about money. It's about whether you'll take the step. Whether you'll cross the line." Daniel's pulse raced. "I don't know if I can." The Whisperer smiled, tilting his head. "Ah, but you will. That's why I'm here. You always do. Humans are predictable. Desperate. Curious. And tonight, you are ready." The room grew colder. The shadows whispered around Daniel like a living thing. He wanted to move, to run, but his feet were frozen in place. Then the Whisperer held out his hand. Not threatening, not demanding. Just open. A gesture of invitation. "Take it," he said softly. "Take the chance. Step into the game. And see how far you can go." Daniel's fingers shook as he reached into his pocket. He touched the envelope. His mind screamed at him to stop. To walk away. To ignore the impossible opportunity. And yet, the thrill, the temptation, the unknown, was too strong. He opened the envelope. Inside was another card. This one read simply. "One choice can change everything. Choose wisely." Daniel's breath caught. His hands trembled. And somewhere deep inside, he felt the first spark of fear and excitement intertwining. You're playing with me," he whispered. The Whisperer laughed softly. "No, Daniel. I'm giving you a chance. But it's always been your choice. Every step, every decision, yours alone." A sudden noise made Daniel jump. From behind the Whisperer, the shadows seemed to ripple, stretching along the walls unnaturally. What are you?" Daniel asked, his voice trembling. The Whisperer's smile widened. "That, my friend, is a story for later. Tonight, you have your first test." Daniel swallowed hard. "Test?" "Yes," the Whisperer said, stepping back into the shadows. "Your first test of courage, of trust, of curiosity. And when the night ends, either you take the next step, or you never see this chance again." Daniel's mind raced, heart hammering. "And if I refuse?" The Whisperer tilted his head, eyes glinting like obsidian. "Then, the game simply continues without you." "But I wouldn't bet on that." The shadows behind him swirled like liquid darkness. The air trembled with anticipation. Daniel clutched the envelope tightly. His entire body shook. The choice was terrifying. And irresistible. Suddenly, the whisperer vanished. Just like that. No sound. No movement. Only the faint echo of laughter lingering in the air. Daniel was alone again. Except for the envelope. And the sense that the night had already begun, and he was at its center. Cliffhanger ending. Daniel stepped back from the envelope, and froze. The lights flickered. The shadows shifted. And in the corner of the room, he could have sworn he saw two glowing eyes watching him. Heart racing, he whispered, "Who's there?" No answer. And in that silence, he realized, the game had already started, and he was already a player. The night had thickened. The city's streets glistened under the pale light of the half-moon, wet from a recent drizzle. Every puddle reflected the tall buildings like shards of broken glass. To anyone passing by, it was just a normal night. But to Daniel, the world felt wrong. The envelope lay heavy in his pocket, its contents more than just paper, they were a summons, a challenge, a key to a game he could barely understand. The air in his apartment seemed to thicken, almost alive. Every shadow stretched unnaturally, and the faint whisper of movement made his skin crawl. Daniel took a deep breath. He had to see this through. $50,000, the words promised. But more than that, he needed to know why someone, something, was pulling the strings behind his life. He stepped out into the alley behind his building. The street was empty, silent except for the distant hum of traffic. He followed the directions exactly, 23rd Street, Building 3, the side entrance slightly ajar. As he approached, a chill ran down his spine. The door creaked open on its own, revealing a dark corridor that smelled faintly of smoke and dust. He hesitated at the threshold. "Daniel," a voice said softly. Not through the air, but inside his mind. Familiar, hypnotic, impossible. His breath caught. "Who's there?" "You know who," the whisperer replied, stepping from the shadows. The dark coat seemed to absorb the weak light, making him look more like a void than a man. "It's time to take your first step." Daniel's hands shook. I don't know if I can do this. I don't even understand what this is." The whisperer smiled, a slow, patient smile that made the darkness around him feel alive. "Do you really think understanding matters? Choices don't need explanation. They need courage. And you've already shown the first sign, you came." Daniel's pulse raced. The envelope burned against his chest. He pulled it out. Is it real? All of it? The money, the messages? The whisperer stepped closer. "Real enough to tempt you. Real enough to test you. Real enough that one small step could change everything. But it's not the money you should be worried about, it's yourself. What are you willing to do?" Daniel swallowed. "Anything. I mean, anything for this chance." The whisperer's eyes glinted. "That, my friend, is exactly what we are about to find out." A sudden movement from the corner of the room made Daniel jump. Shadows twisted unnaturally, as if alive. The whisperer raised a hand. "Fear is natural. It sharpens the mind. It focuses the heart. Let it guide you." Daniel looked down at the card inside the envelope again. "One choice can change everything. Choose wisely." His mind spun. One choice, but what kind of choice? And what would happen if he chose wrong? "Walk forward," the whisperer said softly. "Or turn back. The decision is yours." Daniel's legs trembled. Every instinct screamed to run, to escape, to ignore the impossible. And yet, a part of him, curious, desperate, alive, stepped forward. The whisperer's smile widened. "Good. The first step is always the hardest. But you've taken it." Suddenly, the walls seemed to bend. Shadows stretched toward him from every corner. Daniel felt like the floor itself might give way. Panic surged. "Stop," he yelled. I don't want this." The whisperer tilted his head. "You already want it, Daniel. That's why you came. That's why you're here. Resistance is part of the game, yes, but only to sharpen your decision." Daniel's chest heaved. He gripped the envelope tightly. His fingers cut into the paper. And then, from the shadows behind the whisperer, a hand emerged. Pale, slender, impossibly long fingers that seemed to stretch endlessly. Daniel froze. What is that?" The whisperer's calm voice echoed softly. "A test. A reminder. That some choices are not simple. That some consequences follow the moment you act. But fear not, you are not yet in danger. Not fully. Not yet." Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. The room felt alive. The shadows moved closer. The air thickened, every breath a struggle. "You see," the whisperer continued, "the world is built of choices. Some small, some enormous. And tonight, your choice will ripple further than you can imagine." Daniel swallowed hard, his hands shaking. He glanced at the glowing eyes in the shadows. Every instinct told him to flee, yet curiosity rooted him to the spot. He reached forward, clutching the envelope. The shadows recoiled slightly, like animals sensing his intent. The whisperer nodded approvingly. Yes, you are ready. But beware, the first choice is the easiest to make wrong. And once you step fully into the game." Daniel's mind raced. Could he trust this stranger? Could he trust himself? The envelope felt like both a promise and a threat. The whisperer's voice cut through the tension like silk through air. "The game has already begun, Daniel. Every second you hesitate strengthens the consequences." A sudden crash behind him made Daniel spin around. Empty air. Just shadows. But the sound was enough to make him stumble. The whisperer's voice whispered again, closer this time, almost inside his mind. "Choose. Or be left behind." Daniel's chest heaved. He glanced one last time at the envelope, at the shadows, at the impossible figure before him. Then, almost instinctively, he made his move. And in that instant, the shadows surged forward, and the room seemed to tilt, the walls bending impossibly. Daniel screamed, but it was cut short by silence. When he dared to open his eyes, the whisperer was gone. The shadows retracted, leaving only faint darkness clinging to the corners. The envelope lay at his feet, as if nothing had happened. Daniel bent down, picking it up, hands trembling. He could feel something, danger, promise, temptation, flowing from it. Something alive. Something waiting. Then, a whisper carried through the room, soft and cold. "But the real test is still ahead." Daniel's eyes widened. Outside, the city hummed obliviously. Inside, he realized with a chill, the game had taken its first true step, and he had no idea how deep it would go. Cliffhanger ending. A sudden gust of wind slammed the door shut behind him. Daniel spun around. Two glowing eyes appeared in the darkness, closer this time. And in the faintest whisper, Daniel heard words that would haunt him forever. "Welcome to the choice you cannot undo." The city was quiet, almost unnervingly so. Rain had returned, drumming softly against the pavement outside. The wet streets glimmered under the dim glow of streetlights, reflecting fractured images of Daniel's racing mind. Inside his apartment, Daniel's pulse thundered in his ears. The envelope felt heavier than ever in his hands, as if it carried not just money, but a presence, an expectation, a warning. He had already taken the first steps into the Whisperer's game, but now, the stakes were rising. A sudden gust of wind slammed the door behind him. Daniel spun around, heart hammering. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to thicken, stretching toward him like liquid fingers. "You can't hide, Daniel," a voice whispered, soft but everywhere, impossible to locate. Daniel's fingers clenched the envelope. "Who's there?" he demanded, his voice shaking. The shadows stirred. From them, a figure emerged, not entirely human. Its movements were unnatural, fluid, and terrifyingly precise. Its eyes glowed faintly, red, piercing through the darkness. Daniel stumbled backward, tripping over a chair. His breath came in ragged gasps. What are you?" The whisperer's voice came from nowhere and everywhere. A reminder. Every choice has consequences. Every decision opens a door. And you, Daniel, have opened one you cannot close. The shadow moved closer. Its steps made no sound, but the floorboard seemed to bend beneath its weight. Daniel backed against the wall, his heart hammering so loud he was sure it would give him away. He clutched the envelope tighter, desperate for something, anything, to protect him. And then he remembered the card. The first card. The one that said, "One choice can change everything." Daniel took a shaky breath. His mind raced. There had to be a way out. There had to be. "Do you understand now?" the whisperer's voice murmured, silk and venom intertwined. "You are not alone. Never alone. Every step you take is observed. Every thought. Every hesitation, every fear, mine to watch, mine to twist." Daniel's chest tightened. He looked at the envelope. $50,000. A fortune. And yet, at that moment, it felt meaningless. Because the game was bigger, darker, and far more dangerous than he had imagined. The shadow lunged suddenly. Daniel screamed, flailing his arms instinctively. But instead of striking, the figure paused, hovering just inches from him. Its glowing eyes bored into his, studying him, measuring him. Daniel's knees buckled. He sank to the floor, gripping the envelope like a lifeline. I don't know what to do," he stammered. A faint laugh, soft and cold, echoed through the apartment. "That hesitation, that fear, that is exactly what makes this fun." Daniel glanced around frantically. There were no weapons, no help, nothing but the dark corners of the room. And then he noticed a door slightly ajar on the far side. A small apartment closet. Maybe, just maybe, a hiding spot. He scrambled to it, diving inside. The shadows hesitated for a moment, then receded slightly, as if savoring the hunt. Daniel held his breath, listening to the room. His ears caught the faintest whisper, almost a hiss, carrying a single word. "Step." He shivered. The word echoed in his mind. Step where? Step how? Every instinct screamed to stay put, to wait, to survive. But curiosity, desperation, and fear were a dangerous mix. The whisperer appeared suddenly in the doorway, leaning casually against the frame. "Choices are never easy," he said softly. "But some are necessary. And tonight, yours will decide how deep this game goes." Daniel swallowed hard. "What do you want from me?" "Not what I want," the whisperer replied. "What you want. But to reach it, you must make the impossible choice. Step into the shadows, or stay and let them consume you." The glowing shadow shifted, writhing as if alive. Its eyes never left Daniel's. He realized with a jolt that every hesitation made it bolder. Every doubt made it closer. Daniel's hand shook. He glanced at the envelope one last time. Money was meaningless here. Only courage, decision, and survival mattered. He stepped out of the closet. Heart hammering. Breath shallow. And slowly, deliberately, he moved toward the whisperer, and the shadows behind him. A sudden sound made him freeze. A glass shattered somewhere in the apartment. The shadows flared, extending long, tendril-like shapes that crept along the walls, the floor, even the ceiling. Daniel realized with terror that he was completely surrounded. The Whisperer's voice whispered again, soft as a breeze, sharp as a knife. "This is the first true step. And every step after will demand more. You are no longer the boy you were. You are a player now." Daniel's knees shook. He gripped the envelope like a shield, though he knew it offered no protection. The shadows pressed closer, the apartment seeming to shrink around him. And then, silence. The Whisperer vanished, leaving only darkness and a faint echo of laughter. Daniel's eyes darted around, heart pounding. The shadows pulsed, almost breathing, watching, waiting. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but there was nowhere to go. The envelope trembled in his hands. His mind raced, calculating, fearing, hoping. And then, the sound of footsteps, not his own, not human, coming from the ceiling above, the floor below, the walls around him. Daniel's breath caught. He realized he was trapped. Not by walls. Not by doors. But by the game itself. And by the rules that he didn't yet understand. Cliffhanger ending, a hand, pale, impossibly long, almost unreal, slid out of the shadows toward him. Daniel froze, eyes wide, every nerve screaming. The Whisperer's voice carried softly, from everywhere and nowhere. "Now, Daniel, make your choice." And the room went completely dark. Darkness pressed against every wall of the apartment, heavier than Daniel had ever known. His pulse thundered in his ears, each beat echoing like the footfalls of predators stalking him. The envelope was clutched tightly in his hands, its contents meaningless now compared to the shadows moving around him. A soft hiss rolled through the room, closer this time. Daniel's eyes darted across the walls. The shadows were no longer just shapes, they were alive. Every corner, every ceiling seam, every floorboard seemed to writhe with intent. "Step," the Whisperer's voice breathed through the dark, smooth as silk, sharp as a knife. "Step forward, Daniel, or the shadows will step for you." Daniel swallowed hard. He forced himself to move, every muscle screaming in protest. He barely noticed the cold creeping up his spine, the damp chill of the room, the weight of fear pressing on his chest. Then it struck, sudden, violent, and impossible to anticipate. A tendril of shadow shot from the far corner like liquid smoke, wrapping around his ankle. Daniel yelped, falling to the floor. The envelope slid across the floor, landing just out of reach. The Whisperer's calm laughter echoed, almost playful. "First test, Daniel. Don't let it overwhelm you. Control your fear." Daniel scrambled to his hands and knees. The tendrils writhed around him, pushing him, prodding him, testing him. One touched his shoulder, cold as ice, and he felt a strange pull, almost as if the shadows were trying to read his thoughts, his intentions. "Stay focused," he shouted to himself. "You're stronger than this. You control the choice." The envelope skidded to the other side of the room. He reached for it, stretching every muscle, but another shadow tendril shot toward it first. It hovered above the paper, twisting, stretching, impossibly long. Daniel's fingers brushed the edge. Just a fingertip. And the tendril recoiled slightly, almost as if impressed. "Good," the Whisperer's voice murmured. "Quick reflexes. But this is just the beginning." The shadows began moving faster, circling him, coiling around the furniture, crawling along the walls, closing the space until Daniel felt trapped. His breath came in ragged gasps. Every instinct screamed at him to flee, but there was no escape. Then, from the far corner, he saw it, a faint shimmer, a single thread of light cutting through the darkness. He realized instinctively, the light was his path. One step toward it, and he could reclaim the envelope. Daniel lunged. Shadows whipped around him, slamming into his back, his arms, his legs. Pain flared along his side, sharp but fleeting. He ignored it. His hand closed around the envelope. A tendril lashed out, catching his wrist. The paper threatened to tear. Daniel gritted his teeth, yanking his arm back, and suddenly, the shadow shrieked, a sound like glass breaking inside his skull. The Whisperer's voice whispered again, closer, almost inside his head. Yes, that is it. Fight. Struggle. Show me the choice is yours. Daniel panted. His body ached. His hands were trembling. But the envelope was safe. He held it against his chest rising and falling rapidly. Now, what next? He muttered to himself. His mind spun with the possibilities. One wrong step, one hesitation, and the shadows could consume him. A sudden movement made him freeze. From the center of the room, a figure emerged, human in shape, but impossibly tall, coat black as the void, eyes glowing faintly. The Whisperer had returned, stepping from the shadows like a predator claiming his prey. You're learning, the Whisperer said softly. But strength alone will not save you. You must choose, wisely. Daniel's gaze darted to the envelope. To the shadows. To the Whisperer. His mind raced. Step forward and trust himself, or retreat and risk being consumed by doubt. The shadows surged again, faster this time. Daniel realized he could not hesitate. Every second counted. He took a deep breath. He stepped forward. The shadows recoiled, twisting and writhing, almost in surprise. The Whisperer's eyes glinted, approving. Good, but remember, Daniel. Every victory has its price. Every choice ripples beyond the moment you act. Daniel clutched the envelope tighter. His body shook. He felt the adrenaline coursing through him, sharp and intoxicating. He had survived the first attack. But deep down, he knew it was only the beginning. Then, from the corner of the room, the faintest movement caught his eye. Another shadow, smaller, faster, with eyes that glowed faintly green this time. It darted toward him, and instinctively, Daniel leapt to the side. The creature vanished into the darkness, leaving only silence. The Whisperer's voice drifted through the room once more, calm, menacing, omnipresent. You are no longer merely playing, Daniel. You are hunted. And every step from now on, will demand more than courage. Daniel's knees buckled. He sank to the floor, chest heaving. The envelope pressed against him like a talisman, but he knew it would not protect him from what was coming. The room seemed to shrink, shadows pressing closer. The air hummed with anticipation, almost alive, almost hungry. Cliffhanger ending. A soft, sinister whisper brushed against Daniel's ear. Do you feel it, Daniel? The hunt has only just begun. The shadows surged forward again. And from the darkness, glowing eyes multiplied, red, green, yellow, all fixed on him, waiting. Daniel realized with a shiver, he was not just a player anymore, he was prey. The room felt alive. Shadows clung to every wall, every ceiling seam, pulsating as if breathing. Daniel pressed the envelope tightly against his chest, heart hammering, every nerve screaming. The glowing eyes multiplied around him, red, green, yellow, tracking his every move. He had survived the first attack, but now he knew he couldn't wait. Every second in the apartment felt like a countdown. He had to move, or risk being consumed entirely. The Whisperer's voice echoed through the darkness, smooth, calm, omnipresent. You think surviving one step is enough, Daniel? You are learning, yes, but now the game begins in earnest. Daniel swallowed hard. I need to get out, he whispered to himself. I can't. I won't be trapped here. He scanned the room. The door was still closed, but the frame glimmered faintly, just enough for him to notice the tiny seam of light beneath it. That would have to be the exit. But the shadows blocked his path, tendrils moving unnaturally, coiling around the furniture, twisting in impossible angles. Taking a deep breath, Daniel lunged forward, using the envelope as a shield. The tendrils whipped around him, slamming against his arms and chest. Pain shot through him, sharp but fleeting. He ignored it, forcing himself forward. The whisperer's voice drifted closer, almost inside his mind. Every choice has a price. Every movement has consequences. Don't stumble now. Daniel stumbled, nearly falling, but caught himself. The shadows hesitated for just a fraction of a second, enough for him to slip past one tendril, then another. His pulse raced. Adrenaline surged. He was halfway to the door. Then a voice, soft but chilling, whispered from the darkness, "You can't run forever." Daniel froze for a heartbeat, then bolted. His fingers brushed the doorknob. It was cold, almost unreal. He twisted it and yanked the door open, stepping into the corridor. The hall was narrow, dimly lit, the walls slick with moisture. Shadows moved along it, stretching toward him, but they didn't follow immediately. He ran, chest burning, lungs screaming. Every step echoed, betraying him to the unseen watcher. And then he heard it, the whisperer's laugh. Soft, melodic, echoing through the hall. "Well done, Daniel, but do you really think you are free?" Daniel's steps faltered. Ahead, the corridor split. Two doors. One narrow stairwell leading down. One elevator that didn't hum, didn't light up. He had no choice, he ran toward the stairwell. The air grew colder with every step. His shadow danced on the walls, elongated, distorted, as if the very building itself had become alive. Every floor he descended felt like it stretched longer than before. Suddenly, the stairwell ended in a door. He yanked it open and stumbled into the street. Rain-slicked pavement glimmered under the dim streetlights. Relief flooded him, until he noticed the city was different. Buildings twisted impossibly. Streets looped back on themselves. Neon signs flickered with words that made no sense. And everywhere, the faintest shimmer of shadows lingered, creeping along walls and across the pavement. Daniel's pulse thundered. The city had changed. He realized with horror that the whisperer's game had followed him outside. A soft step behind him. He spun. Nothing. Then a voice, soft as silk, cold as winter, "Welcome to the real game, Daniel." He turned slowly. The whisperer stood on the far side of the street, perfectly still. The dark coat billowed slightly in the rain. Eyes glinting. The envelope burned in Daniel's hands. "You think escaping the apartment meant freedom," the whisperer said, voice echoing unnaturally. "But freedom is an illusion. Every choice you make from here on, is mine to observe. Every fear, every hesitation, will be tested." Daniel swallowed hard. Why me? Why this game? The whisperer stepped closer, shadows stretching unnaturally behind him. "Because you chose to see. Because you dared. Every human has potential, but not all have the courage. You, Daniel, have already taken steps others would never dare. And that makes you perfect for what comes next." Daniel's mind raced. He realized the first test, the shadows, the tendrils, the initial attack, was just the beginning. He had survived, barely. But now he was in the open, and the city itself seemed part of the game. The whisperer tilted his head, studying him like a cat watches a mouse. "The game is no longer confined to walls, Daniel. The streets, the lights, the very city itself, everything can be part of it. And everything can be your test." Daniel gritted his teeth. He had to act. He had to survive. But he knew instinctively that the rules were no longer his. He was part of the Whisperer's world now. A sudden movement caught his eye, a shadow darting across the street, faster than anything human. Daniel jumped back. The envelope pressed to his chest like a talisman, but he knew it offered no real protection. "Daniel," the Whisperer said softly, almost kindly, "your first real choice is before you. Step forward, or retreat. But remember, once you step forward, nothing will ever be the same." The street seemed to stretch endlessly, shadows crawling along the edges, the neon signs flickering in strange patterns. Daniel realized the city itself was a maze, a living trap. Every instinct screamed to run. Every rational thought screamed to hide. But deep inside, a spark of determination burned. He had survived the apartment. He could survive this too. He stepped forward. And in that instant, the Whisperer's smile widened, shadows twisting around him like liquid smoke, the city bending, whispering, watching, cliffhanger ending. A sudden chill ran down Daniel's spine. The shadows surged from every direction, faster, closer, alive. And in the distance, above the distorted city skyline, the faintest glimmer of light formed a shape, a symbol, impossibly glowing, and ominous. "Choose, Daniel, or lose everything." Daniel's breath caught. His heart raced. He realized, the real game had only just begun. The city felt alive, twisted, unreal, a labyrinth of light and shadow that seemed to move with a mind of its own. Daniel's chest heaved. Rain-slicked streets reflected jagged neon lights, distorted and flickering like fractured mirrors. Every instinct screamed at him, run. Hide. Survive. But he knew instinct alone would not be enough. He had to think. He had to plan. The envelope burned faintly in his hands. $50,000. A promise. A trap. A key. He didn't know which. But one thing was certain, the Whisperer's game had followed him into the city, and every step from now on would be a test of courage, cunning, and choice. Shadows moved along the walls, curling, stretching, whispering. Glowing eyes, red, green, yellow, stalked him from every corner. The city itself seemed aware of his presence, the streetlights flickering in patterns almost purposeful, guiding him or luring him into danger. A voice, soft as silk and cold as ice, cut through the tension. "Daniel, do you feel it? The weight of your first real choice. The path you take now will echo forever." Daniel swallowed hard. I have to move," he muttered to himself. "I can't wait. I have to act." Ahead, the street split into two. To the left, a narrow alley, shadows pressing along its walls like living things. To the right, a wide street, faint light and signs flickering, but the shadows here were more scattered, slower, almost, waiting. His mind raced. Left meant danger, but it might offer a shortcut. Right meant exposure, but possibly a safer route. Both paths carried risk, both demanded courage. Then the Whisperer's voice murmured, calm, almost intimate, "Choose, Daniel. Step into the shadows, or walk into the light. Both will test you. Both will demand everything." Daniel's heart pounded. He thought back to the apartment. The shadows. The tendrils. The first attack. The chase through the stairwell. He realized something important. The Whisperer was watching, yes, but he had set the rules so that Daniel's own decisions determined the outcome. His choice was clear. He had to take the alley. The shadows were faster, closer, but if he could navigate them, he might gain control of the situation, rather than being forced along the Whisperer's design. He stepped into the alley. Immediately, the walls seemed to breathe, narrowing, stretching. Shadows surged from every side, tendrils reaching for him, testing, striking. Daniel ducked, dodged, rolled, keeping the envelope tight against his chest. Pain flared where the shadows scraped him, but he ignored it, forcing his mind to focus. Ahead, a faint glimmer of light flickered along the wall. Daniel realized quickly, it wasn't just illumination, it was a pattern, a sequence. The shadows shifted according to it. If he followed the rhythm, he could move safely; if he broke it, he would be overwhelmed. Sweat ran down his face, mixing with the rain. His muscles burned. Every step was a calculated risk. He kept moving, counting, watching, trusting the faint glimmers of light as guides. The Whisperer's voice drifted around him, everywhere and nowhere, impressive. You learn fast. But this is only the beginning. The alley is a test of control. The city, the world, will demand more. Daniel's foot slipped on wet pavement. A shadow tendril lashed out, wrapping around his ankle. He yanked hard, twisting, and the tendril recoiled, almost shrieking in frustration. He scrambled forward, breath ragged, pulse thundering. Then he saw it, a faint doorway at the end of the alley. A small building, half collapsed, faint light spilling from inside. Safety? Or another trap? He had no time to think. Only the instinct to survive. He ran toward it, shadows stretching behind him, licking at his heels. He reached the doorway, slipped inside, and slammed the door shut. Darkness engulfed him. Silence. Relief. For a moment, he dared to breathe. He was alive. He had made it. Then the Whisperer's voice came, soft, almost gentle, but with an edge sharp enough to cut. Well done, Daniel. You made your choice. You have taken the first true step into my world. But every step now will demand more. And every choice will have its price. Daniel sank to the floor, chest heaving. He realized something terrifying: he had survived the first escape. But the game, the real game, had only just begun. His fingers tightened on the envelope. It was more than just money now. It was a symbol, a talisman, a test. He didn't know how it worked, or what it truly represented, but he knew he had to keep it close. Then, from the corner of the room, he heard it, a faint scraping sound, deliberate, slow. Eyes glowing in the darkness. A shadow moving independently, watching, waiting. Daniel's breath caught. He realized, safety was temporary. The Whisperer's influence reached everywhere. Even here. Even now. Cliffhanger ending. A faint light flickered, revealing a figure standing silently in the darkness. Taller than human, impossibly still, eyes glinting with unreadable intent. The Whisperer's voice whispered from everywhere. Step forward again, Daniel, or the shadows will step for you. And as Daniel rose, gripping the envelope tighter than ever, he knew the choice he made next would change everything.